It was a culture founded 3,000 years ago, an empire that flourished while Europe languished in the Dark Ages, a realm that lasted 6 times longer than the Roman Empire. The Mayan civilization that once lived here simply vanished, but their descendants still cling to the land of their forebears. They've survived over 500 years of brutality, from the Spanish with their muskets and measles, through dictators, the Guatemalan army, and a civil war. Thousands upon thousands of them have died, and yet they still wait for the justice they so richly deserve. At a Midsummer Saints' Day celebration in the countryside, there's vivid evidence of the ancient Mayan traditions, mingled with their more contemporary Catholic beliefs. In modern-day Guatemala, these indigenous Mayans far outnumber the descendants of their Spanish conquerors. They are the majority. But it's the minority that rules here. The Mayans have no power. 80% of them live in poverty. For every 1,000 Mayan children that are born, 500 will die as infants. Their land has been stolen and they are exploited as a cheap source of labor.
La tierra fue el problema más antiguo de Guatemala. La gente luchó por tierra, luchó por un pedazo de tierra, cultivarla, tener una perspectiva de sus hijos, un seguro de vida. Y ese seguro de vida llevó a la muerte.
Only now is it becoming clear just how many Mayan deaths there have been in the past 14 years. The so-called disappeared number about 45,000.
Essentially what I do is dig up mass graves of indigenous Mayan communities massacred in the early 1980s.
Andy Kaufman is working on a grisly documentation, identifying victims slaughtered in a secret campaign of terror.
It's incredibly traumatic. In many ways you have to block it out, otherwise you can't work. You have 50 widows standing around a grave of 15 skeletons screaming at the top of their lungs while you're sitting there for 2 days in the broiling hot sun, scraping the dirt off the bones of their husbands. From a scientific standpoint, I can't say from the graves who done it, but if the testimonies of the victims, and they all seem to corroborate, in various cases around the country, are to be believed, the Army is responsible for the majority of the cases.
Derecha. Atención. Firmes. Saludo. Uno.
In Guatemala, the generals command more than just their troops. Guatemala's army has controlled this country since 1954, when it overthrew a democratically elected government in a coup engineered by the United States. 32 years ago, a small band of Mayans started to fight back. Armed by Cuba and Nicaragua's Sandinistas, a guerrilla force numbering less than 2,000 became the focus of a US-backed counterinsurgency war, in which 100,000 Mayans are believed to have been killed.
El ejército de Guatemala, como brazo armado del Estado, como legítimo defensor del Estado, se ha empeñado en ese esfuerzo contrainsurgente y no ha permitido que la insurgencia marxista-leninista llegue al poder.
Do you concede that the army has committed a number of atrocities and human rights violations over the last 15 years?
Ha habido algunas violaciones a los derechos humanos, pero como le digo al señor entrevistador, ha sido a título personal, pero yo creo que institucionalmente jamás ha habido eso.
¿Qué estás haciendo? ¿Estás trabajando? ¿Sí?
Since she won the Nobel Peace Prize last year, Rigoberta Menchú has become the most powerful symbol of the Mayan people. She too has lived with death. Her brother tortured and burnt to death in front of her, her parents both murdered. She escaped by fleeing to exile here in Mexico.
Bueno, yo pienso que es uno de los testigos vivos. Yo pienso que fuera una ofensa personal, sería mucho más fácil perdonarla, olvidarla e iniciar una vida nueva. Pero esto no es un horror personal ni es una ofensa personal. Es una ofensa colectiva, es la memoria colectiva de Guatemala.
It would certainly seem from my research in the time that I've been here that at the heart of the problem for the Indigenous people is the behaviour and the record of the army. Will you, in your time as president, be seeking to demilitarise Guatemala?
No, no precisamente. Creo que en este momento el ejército de Guatemala, sobre todo después de los últimos acontecimientos, está preparado para la paz, está consciente del papel que debe de desarrollar dentro de un sistema democrático y está, estoy seguro de ello, dispuesto a defender la institucionalidad y el régimen constitucional.
It's the army that still orchestrates the nation's political decisions. And it's the army that's the major obstacle to the Mayan struggle for justice and the new president's ability to initiate change.
Las costumbres y tradiciones de la población. Recibiré con amistad y cortesía.
The army is split into two main factions. The traditional hardliners lost ascendancy with the failure of their coup attempts in May.
La misión del escalón superior es dar seguridad a la población de Sololá y debe recordar la protección sobre los derechos humanos. Deben tomar en
What are known as the moderate pragmatists are now in control.
a la población de Sololá.
Despite the army's assurances that they are now a new army, mindful of human rights, far away from the capital in the countryside, the Mayans still live in fear. Miguel Zakuki Mahia and his wife Manuela feed not only their own 3 daughters, but the 7 orphans and widows of murdered friends and neighbours. As a community organiser, there's already been one attempt on his life.
En esa fecha tengo presente las heridas que me hicieron. Aquí tengo una, aquí tengo la otra, aquí tengo una. Y me quitaron los 2 falanges de los 2 dedos aquí.
So they've taken your fingers off.
Ajá, me quitaron solo porque yo llevaba un radio en la mano y con eso me defendí. En ese tiempo tenía como 7 o 8 semanas esta niña. Lo llevaba en los hombros o lo llevaba en la espalda cuando me atacaron.
The most insidious part of the countryside's state of siege are the civil patrols. Community groups armed and administered by the military. In many cases, they're nothing more than young thugs with guns. Officially, membership is voluntary, but terror is often used to force villagers to join up. When De Leon Carpio was Human Rights Commissioner, he was emphatic that the civil patrols should be abolished. But now, as President, he's changed his tune. You mentioned the civil patrols. It would seem that they are perhaps the source of most of the violence that's been wreaked upon the indigenous population. Will you disband them?
Pero en ningún momento se llegó a aprobar, ni mucho menos a llegar a discutir su disolución. En el momento de que llegue la paz, sí, eso sí, o por lo menos el desarme, la función de defensa que tienen las patrullas de defensa, militarmente hablando.
Quiero representante de su organización Tranku Irwi.
Miguel and other local leaders are holding a meeting to discuss a petition of demands they plan to take to the new president. This is the front line of Mayan resistance, communities trying to take control of their own destiny.
Emboldened by the recent political changes, Indigenous leaders from all over the country descend on the capital to deliver their petition. It's taken a lot of courage to get here, the courage of individuals like Miguel. Initially, they're told they don't have an appointment. But eventually they're allowed in, not to meet the president, but his representatives.
Para nosotros todavía continúa pues la imposición de las patrullas civiles y las personas que se llegan a participar pues son víctimas de...
Having waited 500 years, they don't expect much to change quickly.
Hasta la fecha ya estamos 27 de julio, ya llevan mes y medio.
It's enough to say, we are here, we've always been here, and we're not going away.
Señor ministro. Adiós. Adiós.
Adiós.